This is a video tutorial for SP6k nuclear energy and also nuclear fusion and nuclear fission. So a quick key recap from CP3. So you should know the difference between a renewable power source and a non-renewable power source. In case you're a little confused, a renewable power source is one that we can keep using forever. Its source isn't going to run out. Whereas a non-renewable resource come from things that will eventually run out. So things like coal, oil, and gas, that we only have a limited amount of each of those. And we're going to focus on this one today, on nuclear energy. Where do we get nuclear energy from, and why do we class it as a non-renewable? So down in the description, I've put a link to 3 suggested videos that you can go and watch, all about nuclear energy, the advantages and the disadvantages. However, in this video, I'm just going to talk through about what they are, but I suggest you go and watch these 3 videos. I think they're really good for further research. Now, you get a lot more energy per mass from a nuclear fuel than you will from coal, oil, and gas, and it's a lot more. So if you had a kilogram of, say, uranium, which is a nuclear fuel, you're going to get a lot more energy from that than you would, say, a lump of coal, a kilogram lump of coal. Now, they're very useful in submarines and rockets. You don't need much mass to get a lot of energy, and they don't need to be burnt to release the energy. So you're not getting things like carbon dioxide release. So submarines are mostly powered now by nuclear fuel, especially the larger ones. However, uranium is non-renewable. There is more of it than any fossil fuel, but we will eventually run out. There is only a certain amount of uranium in the planet. So some of the advantages and disadvantages. Well, the advantage is it produces less carbon dioxide, okay, if any. So very little carbon dioxide is produced. Compared to the number of deaths from coal and oil and gas power stations, the death count for nuclear power stations is a lot lower. New technologies could be produced that could get rid of a lot of the disadvantages. So a lot of money and time is being put into researching ways to get around the disadvantages we're going to talk about in a moment. And you have a high energy density. So you need to have a very little amount of the nuclear fuel to get a lot of energy out. Some of the disadvantages: you need to dispose of the nuclear waste. So leaks in the water pipes could lead to some of the nuclear waste getting into the water sources. You need to make sure you're on stable rock formations underneath. If you have, say, earthquakes, that could disrupt the power station and you could get nuclear waste enter the environment. And also security from terrorist activity. So you need to make sure that your nuclear power stations are well defended. You need to be able to transport the radioactive material around safely. The public perception of waste is very poor due to events like Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island. The public has quite a negative perception of nuclear energy. And also, you possibly could create nuclear weapons from the byproduct of nuclear energy. Now, atoms tend to be pretty stable. Most don't like to undergo nuclear decay just by themselves. However, a lot of isotopes are not stable. Isotopes will like to decay and become more stable using radioactive decay. So what do isotopes usually have more of than an atom? Neutrons. So if we could somehow give an atom more neutrons, we could turn it into an isotope and make it undergo radioactive decay. So we fire a neutron at pretty high speeds towards the nucleus of an atom to force it to become an isotope. The bigger it is, the more unstable this makes it. And it doesn't just decay, it will actually explode via a process called nuclear fission. So if we have here a neutron hitting an atom of uranium-235. So uranium-235 in its nucleus has 235 protons and neutrons together. But when we fire this extra neutron, the nucleus is going to split into 2 daughter nuclei. because it's gone from being uranium-235 to uranium-236. It becomes a heavier, unstable atom or nucleus. So it splits into the two smaller nuclei, which go off into the reactor. 3 neutrons are released and a lot of energy. Now it's this energy that we can use to then run a power station, but the 3 neutrons go off into the reactor as well. Now each of these neutrons then has the potential to split another uranium-235. So if you think 1 neutron hits 1 atom, which makes 3 neutrons, which can then go and hit 3 new uraniums, which can each then release 3 neutrons. So, little situation here. Your parents give you 1p. You ask them to simply double it each day instead of pocket money. So that means on day 2 you get 2p, on day 3 you get 4p, etc. How much do you think you'll have at the end of the month? Have a think. You will actually have about, well, over 1 billion pennies, or about 10 million pounds. So as you can see, this reaction is going to get out of control very, very quickly. When you have 1 neutron becoming 3 neutrons, becoming 9, becoming 27, very, very quickly this is going to get out of hand. And this is what we call a chain reaction, and more specifically, an uncontrolled fission reaction. So it's uncontrolled because those neutrons are just going to keep multiplying by 3 every cycle. And this is what happened at Bikini Atoll and Hiroshima with the nuclear bombs. It was an uncontrolled fission reaction that released a lot of energy in a very short amount of time. Now this is not very useful for us if we want to build a nuclear power station out of this. We need to find a way to make it a controlled fission reaction. So before we talk about controlled nuclear reactions or nuclear fission, let's just talk about 2 key terms. The first is daughter nuclei. So these are the smaller nuclei that an atom, for example uranium-235, breaks down into. So they're the parts where the 3 neutrons are then emitted from. And the next term, nuclear fission, is when a large, unstable nuclei is split into 2 smaller nuclei to release energy. So if we want to make a controlled fission reaction, we need to find some way to absorb these extra neutrons. So for example here, if we have a neutron emitted, we're going to get, in this example, 2 neutrons emitted, and we absorb 1. That means there's only 1 left to go ahead and cause another reaction. We then absorb the unwanted neutrons from that, and this time we get a much more controlled reaction. 1 reaction releases 1 used neutron, and so on. Now the extra neutrons can be absorbed by parts of the reactor, and we design our nuclear reactors to absorb these neutrons that we don't want to take part in reactions. So how do we control these reactions then and use them to generate electricity? Well, hopefully you recognise a lot of this nuclear reactor. Because a lot of it is very, very similar to the reactors you would have seen in SP3. We still use some sort of heat source, in this case a nuclear reaction, nuclear fission, to heat water, which turns a turbine, which turns a generator, which creates electricity. The only different part here is that heat source itself, this reactor core. And we're going to look at all the individual parts now to see what they do. So the first part is the fuel rods. This is where the fission is taking place. This is the uranium or other radioactive sources. So the rods are put in. Usually pellets are placed inside, and it's these small pellets that are the radioactive material. Now neutrons leave these fuel rods at very, very high speeds. Such high speeds they have a very low chance of interacting with another uranium atom. So we use what's called a moderator. The job of the moderator is to slow down those neutrons to increase the likelihood that these neutrons are going to be absorbed. Otherwise you'd get a very, very weak reaction, not enough to heat the water that we need. So we use a moderator to slow down the neutrons so they can be absorbed by more uranium and cause more fission reactions. Now we also use control rods that we can pull up and lower down to control the rate of the fission reaction. If we notice the fission reaction slowing down, we can lift the rods up, allow more neutrons to hit more uranium atoms. If we see the reaction is getting too fast, or the reaction is starting to become a chain reaction, an uncontrolled chain reaction, then we can lower the fuel rods, absorb more of those neutrons, and slow the reactions down. Now the heat exchanger, this is where the superheated water straight from the reactor heats a different coil of water, which then goes onto the turbines. Now we separate the water out from the water that's in the reactor from the water that's in the turbines so that we don't make the turbines radioactive, and we can contain that radioactivity as much as possible. Now this steam goes on to turn a turbine, which turns a generator, and that creates electrical energy. And you'll learn about how generators work towards the end of year 11. So, quick question for you to try here. Compare the functions of the moderator and the control rods in a nuclear reactor. Pause the video and have a go at this question. And here's the answers that we were looking for. So the control rods absorb neutrons, whereas the moderator lets neutrons pass through, but it slows them down. The control rod wants to just absorb the neutrons, take them out of the reaction, whereas the moderator just wants to slow them down. The control rods can be adjusted to control how many fission reactions occur, whereas the moderator is just there to allow more neutrons to take place. The moderator we can't use to control the reaction, but we can use it to create more fission reactions. So we've looked at fission. Let's go on to look at nuclear fusion. So fission, we said, was breaking large nuclei into smaller ones, whereas fusion is taking small nuclei and making them a lot larger. So here we have two protons, two positively charged protons, and they're going to come together. We're going to smash them together, and you're going to get energy released, a positron emitted, and now a proton and a neutron coming out. So the two protons have become a proton and a neutron. Yet the charge overall is still the same, because the positron is positively charged, this is positively charged, so you have +2 charge, same as what you had at the start. So that is step one. You have two hydrogen 1,1s going to make, this is still hydrogen as it's only got one proton, so hydrogen 1,2 this time, and a positron. Now in the next step, we take another proton and collide that with this new atom that we already had here, this hydrogen. And this proton joins with that nucleus, and you now end up with two protons and a neutron. So this now is helium, and this time a gamma ray is emitted. And it's that gamma ray that we can use to heat water, turn a turbine, and so on. So in step two, we take our 2,1 hydrogen, we smash it with another proton, and we now get helium this time, 3,2, and a gamma ray. And once again, charge is conserved at each stage, as well as the total mass. So this is another diagram of what's actually going on there. So you have your two protons colliding first, then a third proton coming in, and eventually we end up with a gamma ray and helium. So where in the universe is fusion happening all the time? Well, it's happening inside of stars. In the center of stars, you have a lot of nuclear fusion taking place. You have hydrogen forming helium, helium forming larger elements, all the way up to iron. But we need a lot of temperature and a lot of pressure in order for this to happen. So why do we need high temperatures and high pressures? Pause the video and have a think, seeing why do we need these high pressures and temperatures for nuclear fusion. Okay, we need it because the protons that make up the nuclei that we're using are both positively charged. So we're trying to collide two positively charged nuclei together, and positive charges want to repel each other, so you need a lot of temperature and pressure to make a lot of energy to allow those two to actually meet, otherwise they'll just repel each other. And you need to get these nuclei to roughly 600 kilometers a second for them to fuse. So at the moment, a lot of the reactors that we're using, in fact all of the reactors that we are using, take more energy as input than you get out. And we're trying to find ways currently of creating fusion reactors that work at lower temperatures and pressures so that we don't have to put as much energy in and we can use more of the energy that we get out. So what are the benefits of fusion then? We said it takes a lot of energy to do and we need high temperatures and pressures. However, fusion does not produce radioactive waste. The only things that we get out are the helium. However, the containment vessel can become radioactive. So there's still a little bit of radioactive material we have to deal with at the end, but a lot less than in fusion. No carbon dioxide is released, so it's a clean energy source. And hydrogen is much more abundant than uranium. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. So if we can find a way to harness energy from hydrogen, the human race will basically be sorted forever then. Just to finish off, have a go at making a little Venn diagram here. What are the similarities and differences of fission and fusion? Seeing as many things that can go in each of these. Things that only happen for fusion, things that only happen for fission, and things that relate to them both. Okay, so these are some of the possibilities you could have had. Nuclei split up in fission but join together during fusion. Fission can take place at normal temperatures, but fusion needs high temperatures and pressures. Fission creates radioactive waste from the fuel, but fusion does not. Both processes, however, the containment vessel becomes radioactive. The actual container that you're doing this radioactive decay in becomes radioactive in both. Both release energy. Fission uses uranium or plutonium, and fusion uses hydrogen isotopes. Okay, so that is the end of this tutorial. That is also the end of SP6 as a topic. Hope you found these useful. Goodbye.